guys, it's Melanie. Welcome to my channel. Today is part 3 of the Once Upon a Book Club Bookish Advent Calendar. So stay tuned. So if you've been watching these, you know that I did part 1 was days 1, 2, 3, and 4. Part 2 was days 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so far we've gotten 2 books. We've gotten some bookish socks, a bookish apron, a bookish pen, a bookish enamel pen, a mug. I think there was one other thing maybe, I can't remember, but lots of amazing bookish goodies. And it is by the company that does one of my favorite subscription boxes, the Once Upon a Book Club subscription box. I also really enjoy their Once Upon a phone case subscription box, where you get a bookish phone case every month with goodies that kind of go along with whatever that theme is. And this is the first bookish advent calendar I've ever found, and I was so excited when they came out with this, and I have absolutely adored this box. And there are still 4 more gifts. We've got day 9, 10, 11, and 12 to get to. And this is like, oh my gosh, bookish dream Christmas going on here, and I'm in heaven. And well, let's just get on with these stories. For each day there is a short story that goes along with it. You read the story, then you open the gift. And so that's why I've actually split this into 3 videos, because I'm reading the story to you so you get the point of the gift. So let's start with day 9. If ever the day comes that you happen to discover an old book on your bookshelf, so old in fact that you're almost frightened to touch it for fear it might fall apart, your reading has finally paid off. You may not know where the strange book came from, but you'll gently place it on your coffee table and examine it, finding no legible words or symbols on the outside cover. You'll turn it over and run your hands over the worn leather, soft from decades of being molded around those thin pages, and you'll wonder, what is inside? Gently now, you'll open the cover and find only 2 words on the first page. Happy reading. Confused, you'll turn to page 2, and like a light switch being flipped on, the wind will begin to swirl around your living room, throwing books from your shelves and tipping houseplants onto their sides. The pages of the mysterious book will flip wildly, and the objects strewn across your home will rattle and shake with a thunderous roar. You'll hold on to your chair for dear life, and then abruptly, it will stop. You slowly lean forward, cautiously staring at the page the book stopped on, only to discover nothing on it. No words, no pictures, nothing to tell you what just happened. And then, with a crack, a beam of light will shoot from the center of the page, illuminating you and pulling you into its incredibly warm and welcoming euphoria, despite the panic you know you should be feeling. You'll feel yourself rise from your chair, and then you'll be falling, 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 and without a thud or a bang, you'll just stop. When you open your eyes, you'll find yourself in a place you never imagined could have existed. A land of books. Growing from the trees and sprouting from the flowers, encyclopedias create stepping stones and fairy tales build castles. You see paper airplanes flying overhead, and bookworms crawl across the ground below with their glasses askew from a long night of reading. Everything is created from the written word, and everywhere you go, there is knowledge. As you walk through this mysterious land, discovering new stories coming to life before your very eyes, you may even come across the book giant. Old as the original library of Alexandria, he sits upon a throne of books, forever reading and learning more. You may be fearful as you approach such a great beast, but fear not, for he has learned that kindness gets you much farther than hate. What do you desire? He may ask in a booming voice, shaking the very book stacks that he cherishes so dearly. You think for a moment, but truly you do not know. This place of wonder is more than you could have ever dreamed, and yet it's not where you belong. Before you can even open your mouth, the giant may smile and nod, knowing what you need before you do. Take one of my treasures before you return home. If you found this world, you are truly worthy of one of them. Carefully, you begin to sift through the rows upon rows of endless tomes, finding many still wrapped in paper not yet discovered. You find one wrapped in pink, and you have a good feeling about this one as you turn to hold it up to the giant in triumph. Excellent choice, dear reader. You don't even know what is contained in the wrapping, yet you followed your heart. I hope you'll return to us again, perhaps on your next reading adventure. With a snap of his fingers, you'll be shrouded in dust, causing you to rub your eyes and cough. When you open them, you're back in your living room. No old mysterious book to be found. However, in its place, the wrapped pink book sits decorated with Santa's faces you hadn't noticed before. You slowly pull the paper away to find a note on top of your newly discovered treasure, which reads, "Happy reading." And you smile because you know that reading is just the escape you need to always bring you back to happiness. So now we open up the pink wrapped paper with Santa on the cover for day 9. And in this we have Setting Free the Kites by Alex George. And there's something sticking out the top here. So when you turn to the beginning here, this little thing sticking in says happy reading. How cute! Setting Free the Kites tells the story of 2 teenagers, Robert Carter and Nathan Tilley, and the season that marks the turning point in their lives. The boys are unlikely friends. Robert is cautious, reticent, and an observer. Nathan is curious, daring, and an eternal optimist. Yet when they meet on the first day of school in their coastal Maine town in 1976, they form a bond that both come to depend on. Their friendship is forged in the crucible of 2 family tragedies, and together the boys navigate paths away from heartbreak, finding comfort in unexpected places. The blistering crash of rock and roll records, the mysteries of a long-closed paper mill, and kites soaring high above a windswept beach. Nathan's unflagging confidence and optimism is the catalyst for many of their adventures, but as the boys discover, too much hope can be a dangerous thing. When Robert and Nathan take summer jobs at the local rundown amusement park, they make their first forays into a less innocent world. Amid the debilitated thrill rides and concession stands, they come to understand some unexpected truths about family, desire, and revenge, and most of all, about themselves. Compelling, heartbreaking, and deeply human, Setting Free the Kites is a funny, moving drama that explores the pain and joy of childhood and the glories of youthful friendship. Interesting. It's really cool that I've gotten 3 books from this Bookish box, which is just awesome, and I've loved every single one of the gifts in here. It's really, really cool. I'm definitely going to get this every single year now. I hope they keep doing it. Okay, day 10. Walking through the grocery store with her 2 children in tow, Joanna came to the conclusion that Christmas was going to be tight this year. With her husband out of the picture and her working overtime nearly every week just to pay the bills, she had accepted the fact that presents weren't a priority. Her 2 boys were old enough to understand that gifts weren't the point of Christmas anyway. Nick, almost 12, had stopped believing in Santa years ago, and while Kevin had only discovered the truth last year at the age of 9, she knew her boys would understand. She pushed the cart through the store, weighing the sale prices on different brands and trying to stretch the $42 she had entered the store with. As they finally finished up, they went to the self-checkout line and the boys took turns handing her the various items from their carriage. She opened her tattered wallet and began to feed the bills to the machine, expecting many of them to be rejected due to their wrinkled and half-folded state. When they had finally finished paying and loaded up the car, she couldn't help but try to rack her brain as to how she could still give her fantastic kids a decent Christmas. So boys, I think we should focus on being with each other this year, so we're going to limit Christmas to only a few gifts each. It's not about the presents anyway, right? She held her breath as she waited for them to respond. Surprisingly, her youngest son spoke first. "Okay, Mom, I'm just glad to get to be with you and Nick," Kevin said between handfuls of animal crackers she'd found on sale in the checkout aisle. "Nick, that all right with you?" She glanced in her rearview mirror to meet his eyes, and he just looked back and shrugged. "Nick, you have to understand that—" He cut her off before she could finish. "Why can't I spend Christmas with Dad?" She felt the wind get knocked out of her as she turned her eyes back to the road and tried to hold herself together. The rest of the car ride was spent in silence, broken only by Kevin chomping on his cookies. They pulled into the driveway of their little ranch and piled out of the car, each towing a grocery bag. As they walked into the house, Nick threw his bag onto the kitchen counter and continued down the hallway to his room, slamming the door shut. Joanna put her groceries away in silence, Nick's sharp words on repeat in her head. She placed the last box of pasta in the cabinet and went to her own room, silently closing the door. She laid down in her bed and closed her eyes, trying to nap off the stress of their grocery trip. As she was just starting to relax, her door opened. Nick stood there and looked at her, not saying anything. He walked across the room and sat down next to her, placing a red and white present in her lap. "I'm sorry, Mom. I love you, and I shouldn't have said that. I know you're doing the best you can on your own." Nick reached out and hugged his mom as he said it, knowing he'd hurt her in the car. "Sweetheart, it's okay. I know things have been rough around here, especially on you, but I'm working hard and they'll get easier, I promise," she said with her chin on top of his head. "I'm really sorry it's been such a terrible year. But you didn't have to get me something." "No, I wanted to. You deserve it, and I can't wait for Christmas." She unwrapped the paper and found a beautiful new wallet, pink and covered with colorful flying books. Since she'd been working so much lately, she hadn't had time to read in a long while. "I know you needed a new one, and you never buy anything for yourself anymore. My friend's parents took me to the store so it could be a surprise." The fact that he had noticed she'd stopped coming home with the occasional shopping bag saddened her, but she was overwhelmed by the observation and the kind-heartedness of her oldest son. "Thank you, sweetie, it's perfect." She kissed the top of his head and held him tighter. "You know, I haven't read to you boys in a long time. What do you say we spend some time together every night the next few weeks, and we can read some of your favorite stories?" He smiled. "That sounds awesome." They walked down the hallway together and gathered Kevin from his room. They all clambered onto the couch and snuggled up as she began to read, complete with all the character voices and facial expressions that brought the story to life. She knew it would continue to be tough, but she loved her sons and they loved her. The troubles of the world faded away when her kids smiled up at her as she continued to read until they drifted off to sleep. Oh my gosh, that story made me want to cry. Really. Truly. The day 10 gift. And it is the pink wallet with the books on it. I love it. It's great. And it actually, except for the color, it actually matches the socks that came for one of the other days. And this was by Chicklet Designs, which I believe is the Once Upon a Book Club people. I really like this. Day 11. The bookstore was increasingly busy during the holidays, and it made the owner, Nirali's, heart swell. Her little shop struggled most of the times of the year, with more people taking advantage of ebooks and coming into the little bookshops less. But during the holidays, the rest of the year faded away and her focus became those seeking books for the book lovers in their lives. Just as she had directed an older couple to the historical fiction corner, a man approached the desk seeking a book for his teenage daughter. Following his departure to the young adult section with a few recommendations scribbled onto a piece of paper, a woman sought a travel guide to France for a trip she was hoping to take next year. An endless stream of gift givers piled into her store on the last day they'd be open before being closed for the holidays, and her staff ran around trying to keep up with the diminishing shelves. As the day began to wind down and the crowd started to thin, Nirali realized she hadn't done any of her own shopping yet, and took the small lull to grab a few things from around the store for her loved ones. Her family had come to expect books from her, and this year would be no different. She grabbed one of the new tote bags off the rack by the door and wove her way to the various sections of the shop. A new recipe book for her mom, who was absolutely experimental and loved to try new things when it came to cooking, would be perfect. A book on cycling and the latest skills and techniques for her father, who was always trying to keep his bike up to date for his next race. Her brother was tricky since he claimed to dislike reading, something she refused to accept as an actual possibility. She grabbed him a thin copy of a new detective series she had heard nothing but good things about. If anything could captivate a resistant reader, it was mystery and suspense. Her grandmother loved historical fiction, and her grandfather adored animals, making their two gifts the easiest in the bunch. Her niece had recently discovered the thrill of a pop-up book, so she grabbed two in hopes it would entice her 3-year-old self to love the magic of books even more. As she descended the staircase from the children's room on the 2nd floor, she stopped and gazed upon her store. She had built it up from nothing, a little hole in the wall on Main Street that was overlooked and underappreciated. She had created a thriving business all on her own, and she was proud of her accomplishments. She watched her customers pull books from the shelves, and mothers smile proudly as their children sat quietly, captivated by a world created only on paper and oblivious to the chaos around them. Nirali was overwhelmed with pride at the idea that she was inspiring people to fall in love with reading, and she carefully wove her way through the crowd to retrieve the final touches to her own gifts. She grabbed a handful more of the tote bags and a few bags of coffee from the register. She headed back upstairs and up the hidden flight in the back of the shop to her 3rd-floor apartment. She tossed her collection of gifts onto the dining room table and began to slide a single book into each tote bag, paired with a little bag of coffee from the register. The teal bags, each designed beautifully, read, "Happiness is a cup of coffee and a really good book." They made the perfect wrapping for her gifts as she collected each of the full bags and stacked them neatly by the door, ready for her relatives to receive. Smoothing out the final tote bag and centering it on her dining room table, she ensured that after her long day of work, it would be the first thing she saw when she returned. She was already looking forward to curling up on the sofa with a good book and sipping a cup of coffee, but there were many more readers to help downstairs who were her focus now. Locking the door behind her and bounding down the stairs, the hum of the crowd reached her ears as she approached the main floor. Stopping on the staircase again, she looked over the sea of book lovers who filled her store, and she smiled. For the love of reading was abundant, and she could never have wished for anything more than her little bookshop. Sweet. Day 11. And it is the teal tote bag they described. How cute! Happiness is a cup of coffee and a really good book. I love it. And this is also by Chicklet Designs. They actually make a lot of this stuff, which is really, really cool. Okay, now for the very last story. I'm sad for this to end, but it's been a lot of fun. Okay, day 12. It was quite easy for Maddie and her daughter, Lauren, to forget that the holidays were coming, for the two were so eerily alike that their constant bickering made it so any positive event was easily overshadowed by the stomping of feet and the slamming of doors. Since Lauren had turned 14, it was a coin toss regarding what her personality would be for the day. Maddie's daughter, who used to love going shopping with her and chatting about the latest school gossip over lunch, had vanished and was replaced by a girl who couldn't listen to her mother talk for more than 12 seconds before rolling her eyes and continuing to type into her phone. There were sometimes brief glimmers of the girl Lauren had been, with the occasional joke or comment about an outfit as they passed by a store window. Yet Maddie knew how careful she had to tread, for one wrong word and her daughter would cease talking the rest of the trip. Christmas Eve had arrived, and the day had been a typical experience for each of them. A few mini spats, but the holiday spirit had kept the true arguments at bay. Maddie sat on the living room long after her husband and son had gone to bed, enjoying the quiet and flipping through an old photo album, illuminated by the lights on her Christmas tree. As she turned another page, a small movement caught her attention, and she jumped a mile before realizing Lauren had slipped down the hallway to see what she was doing. Holding her breath, Maddie held up the photo album so Lauren could see and waited for her daughter to either march back down the hall or take the bait. Lauren wandered over to her mother and looked down at the open page, rolling her eyes almost immediately at the photos taped inside. "Why did you ever think we'd want to see photos like this?" Lauren snited, as she pointed to an adorable photo of herself in a Halloween costume at the age of 10. "Because you made a really adorable witch? And someday maybe you'll think so too. Maddie wasn't treading water anymore. She was making a cannonball. She was sick of walking on tiptoes around her Lauren, and she wasn't going to let her ruin Christmas. Lauren didn't say anything in response and stood there for a moment, taken aback by her mother's remark as Maddie continued to flip through the pages of the family photo album. Lauren turned back to her bedroom, and Maddie had assumed she had lost her for the night until Lauren returned, carrying a bundle of fabric in her arms. She climbed onto the couch beside her mother and flung the beautiful blanket she had cherished since childhood across their laps. Fluffy and white with black script across the entire thing, she nestled her head into the crook of her mother's arm and waited for Maddie to continue turning the pages. Maddie was taken aback by her daughter's sudden interest, but she didn't want to jinx it. So she continued flipping through the book and pointing out moments that Lauren might not remember. "You were 5 and you loved Willy Wonka, so we had everyone dress up as something from the book. Do you remember?" She pointed toward the picture which featured their dad dressed as Willy Wonka, Maddie as fully blown up Blueberry Violet, Lauren as a piece of candy, and her little sister as a cupcake. "Mom, do you not remember the nightmares your face paint gave me for weeks?" She giggled as she pulled the blanket closer. They sorted through holidays, birthdays, and even vacations they had taken together as a family, sharing little comments once in a while, but overall just enjoying each other's presence. Maddie finally looked down at her daughter after a span of quiet and saw that her teenager had fallen asleep, curled up against her. She smiled at Lauren and pulled the blanket tighter around them as she slid down and got comfortable. Though her family had changed with time, deep down, Maddie knew they would always be there for one another, and for that she was grateful. She snuggled down, and listening to her daughter's deep and even breaths, Lauren had stopped believing in Santa a long time ago, and would probably roll her eyes if her mom had even mentioned this. But truthfully, this moment was all Maddie needed to believe that Christmas magic was real, and that wonderful thought stayed in her head as she drifted off to sleep. The end. Merry Christmas from the Once Upon a Book Club team. So now for day 12's gift. The last gift of the box. Ugh. This is like packed in there. It's the blanket they were talking about, but it's like all the air was sucked out. It's fluffing up immediately. Oh, it's so soft. It's really nice. Super soft. And at some point I'll have to read what all is written on here. Script text throw blanket by Chicklet Designs. But let's see how big it is. That's a pretty good sized blanket. And it's so soft and snuggly. I love it. So which story did you guys like the best? Which gift did you like the best? Comment down below and let me know. I think this might be one of my favorite gifts. It's so snuggly. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a big thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click that subscribe button down below. And until next time, remember to always be completely you.